And welcome back to Block TV. Time for links in the chain, pardon me. Tyler Jenks. Tyler Jenks is the president and chief investment officer of Lucid Investment Strategies. Previously a division of Dumont and Blake, he has been an investor most of his life. It doesn't get as experienced as he does, so to speak. He has spent the last 42 years as a student of markets and investments, managing hundreds of millions of dollars for institutions, charities, pension funds, and individuals. He's a big believer in Bitcoin and actually predicted in a blog post on Medium last month that the price of Bitcoin could one day hit a whopping $10 million. So let's start with how is Bitcoin going to reach that exact amount of number as predicted by Tyler? And obviously I'm very happy to have Tyler with us today. Mr. Jenks, thank you for being with us. That prediction, that Medium prediction, do you still stand by it?
Yes, I certainly do, and thank you very much. It's a real pleasure being on Block TV. I've heard a lot about it through my partner, Leah Wald, and this is a great experience. In terms of that $10 million figure,
yes,
I'm making an assumption that the world financial situation has crossed a line that it can never return to, which is mathematically the amount of debt in the world has grown at a pace that makes it impossible for debtors to be able to pay off creditors. And all I mean by that, I can give you with two simple facts. Number one is, over the last 20 years, the total world wealth, which I define as all real estate, commercial, residential, and raw land, all currency, all gold, all stock markets, all pension funds, all sovereign wealth funds, the total value of all world wealth equals approximately $327 trillion. And that amount has grown by 136% over the last 20 years, which sounds pretty good. But when you take a look at the total world debt,
okay,
what one party owes to another party, all the way up to central banks and the banking system and corporations and institutions and pensions funds and you and me, in terms of credit cards and mortgages and car payments, total world debt is at about $277 trillion, just slightly less than total world wealth. But here's the important thing for all of your listeners to understand. Total world debt has been growing at 336% over the last 20 years.
Jesus.
3 times faster than total world wealth. And what that means is sometime later this year or early next year, those two numbers will cross. And what that means is the world must find a way through its central banks or through defaulting on the debt, country by country, corporation by corporation, a way to solve this debt problem.
Tyler, I'm going to stop you for a second.
I believe...
No, first of all, I'm going to stop you for a second because, I mean, it's one heck of a prediction and it sounds as if it's quite imminent.
Unfortunately, it is imminent, but we all define time a little bit differently. I think it has to happen within the next 5 years. I think it's possible that it'll happen in the next 3 years. And unfortunately, there is a possibility that it is out of the control of any one group or group of groups, so that it will be forced upon us as a society, and that could happen at any time. If you remember back in 2006, 7, 8, and 9,
right,
it was just 2 little companies, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, that could not pay counterparties, and those counterparties then could not pay their counterparties, and the entire bubble burst,
And the entire
and
bubble
we had
burst,
one of the worst
exactly, we saw the worst
recessions of
recession in
all time.
2008 that nearly brought down countries. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Exactly.
And I'm asking you, do you think that we're heading there in the next 5 years again? And that's where we're going to look for an alternative.
That's exactly right. The problem today is 10 times worse than it was back in 2006 and 2007. And the powers that be, meaning the central banks and mainly the Federal Reserve of the United States, has no more ammunition, and the problem is much, much greater. Therefore, I believe there's only 5 solutions to the problem,
which are,
and one of them happens to be Bitcoin.
Okay, how can Bitcoin solve this problem?
The only way for any of the 5 solutions to work is for the value of that solution to get to a point that it's approximately 40% of the entire problem. Now, by the time any of this occurs, I believe the total world debt will be about $500 trillion. 40% of $500 trillion is 200 trillion. If Bitcoin rises to $10 million, it will be worth $210 trillion. Why? Because Bitcoin is limited to just 21 million Bitcoins. We will never have more Bitcoins than that. At 21 million Bitcoins, at $10 million, it's worth 210 trillion, which is 40% of the debt problem. Now, why is 40% an important number? Because historically, reserve currencies such as gold, when we were on a gold standard, represented approximately 40% of the currency in circulation around the world. And each country was expected to keep about a 40% reserve. So I believe that is one of 5 possible ways of the world getting out of this mess.
Firstly, I'm heading into that mess 5 years from now. A fascinating point of view. If Bitcoin is there to say, to be one of the 5 solutions to get the world out of that collision, so to speak, or the big burst of another bubble, is it ready to do that? That's one. Is the world ready for that? Is my second question. And actually, you know what? Let's take it from a different angle. This week, the 5th largest bank, in the world, from Japan, has announced that it is considering or aiming, the language is always very PC, to enter into blockchain in 2020 to introduce it to its investors. First of all, do you believe that's the case? Does that mean that we're on the way for mass application into cryptocurrencies, or specifically, let's say, Bitcoins, to help save in this upcoming crash? But what is your take on that in that respect?
That's a great question, and I'm going to give a 2-part answer. The first had to do with the first way you phrased the question: is Bitcoin ready? The answer is no, it is not.
Okay.
Bitcoin and all the cryptos, meaning 4,000 different projects, are all in a bear market.
Exactly.
That started back in December of 2017, and we are still in that bear market for very good reason. My prediction is it's got a long way to go, another year or 2, and much, much lower prices. Therefore, Bitcoin is not ready to take the center stage of the solution to this big problem. The second part of my answer is specifically about what you're talking about, that more and more banks, mainly because of Ripple, XRP, have been getting interested in one way or another of being involved in blockchain and being involved in some sort of a solution, not to the big problem that I'm describing, but simply a more efficient way of moving money between parties. And I am very suspect of anything that has to do with blockchains other than the original Bitcoin blockchain, the core blockchain.
Why?
In terms of any of the other projects are not decentralized. Every other project that has come along, from Ethereum to Ripple to Monero to Cardano to Litecoin, even though they have wonderful aspects to them, none of them are decentralized the way Bitcoin is.
Let me
Now,
ask
why
you
is
that.
that?
Let me play devil's advocate then for a second.
Please,
Isn't it the case, though, that in
please.
order to integrate a new technology or to bring the masses along, one has to also integrate it within the institutions that exist right now? I see your point. One can agree that it takes away the main essence of, the revolution of decentralized technology. But that said, in order to mass adopt it, doesn't it have to be integrated into the current existing institutions?
No, just the opposite.
Okay.
As long as there are alternatives to a completely decentralized, let me explain what I mean by decentralized. Bitcoin, there is no person that works at Bitcoin. There is no CEO. There is no COO. There is no committee. There is no board of advisors. There are no board of trustees. There is no budget. There is no marketing budget. There are no salaries. It is completely decentralized as a peer-to-peer way of moving information and money between you and me. Every other project, if there are people involved, those people are in a position to change the rules at any time, to fork off into another project, to double or triple or quadruple or go up 10 million times the number of tokens that they are offering. They can pre-mine tokens, meaning they make money out of thin air, and they use that in order to market their new product, and at any time they can change that. Now, because of that differential between no one being in charge and only everybody acting together, that's why Bitcoin, in my mind, is the only solution to a world problem. Now, you make a very, very good point. And that is, does not that make it very difficult for Bitcoin to get mass adoption?
Yep.
And the answer is absolutely. At one point, we had 100% of all crypto in Bitcoin. That's dropped down as low as 34%, and now it's back up to 58%. So without anybody making any decisions, 58% of all the money in crypto is still in Bitcoin. And it is my contention that that will approach 100% again at the end of this bear market. And that's what's needed for mass adoption. Mass adoption, if it's only got one choice, and that choice is preferable to the other 4,000, you've got to get rid of the other 4,000 in order for that one that cannot be promoted by anyone to take its proper place.
I know I'm stopping you, but my next question was, what is your best advice for trading in a bear market? And I think you just answered that question in a way, because, and by the way, yes, we've heard that before as well, that everybody, well, not everybody, but many people do believe that the one currency that will survive, the one currency or that has started it all, will be Bitcoin, and that the rest will actually fall away. Question to you, though, because you make such a compelling argument. Also, one of the latest news over the course of this past week is pension funds that were actually, for the first time, I believe it was Fairfax County Police and Fairfax County Employees Pension Plans, invest in Morgan Creek Blockchain Opportunities Fund.
Yes.
Straight out, aren't we for this at the end of the day, or is this too risky at this point in time? Because this would also mean integrating, pensions at the end of the day is the old school investment market. If pensions move to cryptos, doesn't that mean also that mass adoption can be faster, or is it actually too risky to try, pensions on this currency at this point in time?
Another terrific question. This is such a difficult concept, not only for me, but for everyone in the space, which is, don't we want more and more people to know about blockchain and know about these projects, many of which have wonderful attributes? Or do we not? And my conclusion is we do not, because the regulators around the world, particularly the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, have come to the conclusion that every project other than Bitcoin is an illegal security and must be registered as a security and then regulated as a security. And that is going to happen. Now, what that means is all of the exchanges that are not regulated and all of the projects that are not regulated will either be shut down by the regulators or they must themselves become regulated. Bitcoin cannot, never will be regulated, and to have the Securities and Exchange Commission say that earlier last year is a very important concept for people to understand. And the reason it can't be regulated is nobody's trying to sell anything to anybody. Everybody must make their own decision if they want to buy Bitcoin, and then I can buy from you and you can buy from me. Every other project is a sales project with marketing, trying to get people to put money into something, and so they are glorified through marketing. And unfortunately, that glorification has turned out in many examples just to be outright scams. So the problem is, how do you tell the motivation of a person or a group among the 4,000 who have come out with a project? And the regulators say you can't. And because you can't, we're not going to allow them. So if Fairfax County or a bank in Japan or a country like Venezuela, who came out with their own crypto called a petro, or the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, the new Russia, comes out with a ruble cryptocurrency, in each of those cases, they are centralized by a group that can make a decision that after the fact will change the entire landscape. So I come down on the side of, let's get this over with. Let's get Bitcoin down to 1,000, and let's get all of these other projects down close to zero so they no longer are viable, so that people only have one choice, the best choice.
No, and I got to tell you, it's a fascinating take, and very much, a very experienced trader's take. I don't know if everybody will agree with you, but one can definitely argue that, in order to mass adopt with a large group of people, you got to give them one choice. As we all know, making a decision may be the hardest thing in life. Tyler, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. That was a fascinating take on where we stand right now, both in this market and in the long run. And of course, for all of us, thank you for joining us. And for all of us here at BLOCKTV, do not forget to check us out on any social platform you have, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram. Send us questions, we'll answer them, and we'll be right back.